Well, hello everyone, and you don't have the intro right now, but I think as Tyler says, everybody needs to calm down. Everybody needs to calm down in Calgary. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. You can follow us on Twitter as Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on we have officially joined, and we'll dig into this a little bit more. We've officially joined the Hockey Podcast Network. We're pleased to be welcomed by them. You're going to see their logo going forward and all of that stuff as we go on. So we're very happy to announce that arrangement, and we'll dig into that a little bit more, which means you're going to hear some ads. And give me a quick moment here while I get this set up and turn on my radio voice. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 8778 HOPE, HOPENY, or text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. Pass-through or per wager tax may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Best must win to receive bonus bets, which expires in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms of responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer. Copyright NHL 2025. All rights reserved. Okay, we got that out of the way. And but again, joined by Matt from Fireside Chat. Matt, how are you doing?
Very good with the Flames week that was, and yeah, things are starting to look up on all fronts for the organization.
Yes, this was this was the most coming into this week, like just without the games, this was the most united Flames voices that we have heard in a long time. Like I have not, like, I've been following this team. You've been following this team for a long time. I've not seen this sort of visceral anger towards three interviews that I can't think of one.
No, and it takes a lot to unite, like places like Calgary Puck, Reddit, the local media, podcasts like yours and mine, the national media, and everybody collectively going, what the?
Yeah, pretty much. It was, we'll dig into that as we continue on here, but let's review the week because it was the Flames are continuing on a road trip. It just feels like this is the end road trip, the road world that will never end. Like, are the Calgary Flames a rock band? That's my question.
Yeah, basically, we're on tour. Yeah. Next month, we're basically home from the middle of the month right through to the beginning of January. So, with only one short trip up to Edmonton. So, basically, all of December is mostly in the Saddledome.
Yeah. So. Yeah, this has been a lot of road games, and they did get points in 3 of the 4 games that they played last week, which was a 5-2 win over the Canucks. Oh, I forgot the Dallas Stars game in there too, where they won the shootout as well. Over Dallas. That was Devin Cooley's home debut on Hockey Night in Canada. That was. Oh, we did talk about a little bit about that game, I think. It was the Canucks 5-2. Lost to the Lightning 5-1, where Dustin Wolf lasted 5 minutes and 52 seconds, and we did not see him for the rest of the week. It was Devin Cooley that carried on the Lightning game. They beat the Panthers 5-3, and they lose to the Hurricanes 1-0 in OT, in what some have called one of the more boring games of the year. But Not a lot of shot volume in that game, but
yeah, when you have 3 shots at the halfway mark of the game, it's a slow game.
Yeah, that's the second one. They had that Flyers game was also
very painful. Yeah.
Very painful as well. So, I do want to just quickly. I think Devin Cooley is like. I think Devin Cooley looks a lot quicker. Like, it just seems like, I'm not a goalie expert. You're probably smart. You are smarter than me in goaltending, but I feel like Devin Cooley his movements look a lot quicker. He's playing with a little bit more confidence, not arrogance, but confidence. If that makes sense.
Yeah, in the preseason last year, when I saw him a little bit, he was looking very much the same, and then his play continued in the AHL until he got hurt halfway through the season. And, now that he's healthy again, like, his play has pretty much actually been consistent, except for the time after the injury of this, borderline, elite play from him. Like, his stats, he was leading all the goalie stats in the AHL last year. And, thus far this year, he actually is the NHL leader in goals against and save percentage. So, yeah, it's a little bit odd. But, goalies are, a little bit of voodoo, and it sometimes takes you time to figure things out. And, like, we saw that Kiprusoff didn't really get going until he was 27. Cooley's 28. Anthony Stolarz with Toronto bounced around the league forever before, landing a starting job with them. And, goalies sometimes just take time to figure out the mental aspect of it. And Cooley has definitely improved on the mental side of things.
Yeah, his mantra is, "We're all going to die."
Yeah,
we're all going to die. Yeah,
good. How to tell a goalie or a person as a goalie, without asking.
Yeah. But yeah, he is looking really good, and that was a big concern, of course, coming into the year. We were talking about if the Flames needed to go find a backup. And they found one right now. So far, this is still early in the year. I think there's a lot of talk about what to do with Devin Cooley. Do you trade him? Do you extend him? I am not, and I think we just wait and see what happens here. We're just past American Thanksgiving. It's a long way to go before I don't think we need to make any decisions about Devin Cooley yet.
No, and realistically, like, if they do decide to re-sign him down the road, it'll probably be like the 2 to 3 year deal for like $2 to $2.5 million, sort of like Dan Vladar's contract when we signed him after acquiring him from Boston. And basically, hey, you've been playing well, we'll reward you for that, but not a huge amount of term. So, because goalies can regress very quickly, and you don't need a long-term anchor either.
Yeah. It is nice to have a couple of years of a backup to Dustin Wolf. And speaking of Dustin Wolf, I don't know about you, but I am absolutely not worried about Dustin Wolf. I think for me, one of the problems that Dustin Wolf is facing is he believes he has to win games 1-0. And I think if this team had a lot more offense, I think his numbers would be a lot better. I think he feels a lot of pressure making all of these saves. I mean, the Tampa game was probably the worst game that I've seen him play. He just didn't.
And honestly, the 3 goals that went in, 2 of them were deflections, like right in front of him, which as a goalie, like, it either hits you or it goes in. Like, it's impossible to react to those. And when you let Brandon Hagel all the time and space to wind up for a shot, like, yes, it, obviously not good to give up 3 goals on 5 shots, but, if the Flames had some defense and were covering sticks, they might have not surrendered any goals in that time. So, it's hard to yes, obviously was not great off the hop, but he and the rest of the team were also responsible
everybody
for that.
was kind of a little sleep at the wheel there, and they just couldn't get the wheels back into the game there. Yeah, and I guess overall, I haven't minded the defense pairings other than the Tampa game. Anderson and Ball have looked pretty good. Kuznetsov, Weegar, I think, is a good pair, and then I think the Hanley, Pahal, Bean trio is doing what they can. It's a rebuilding defense. There's nothing that we need to expect too much more out of them. I think the development of Kuznetsov has been great, and Rasmus Anderson has probably been the Flames' best player, at least in November.
Yeah, for sure. And realistically, the Flames' defense is more or less like two number 2 defensemen with Weegar and Anderson, a number 4 with Ball, and then an assortment of number 7s on a normal defense. Yeah. So, they're doing the best they can.
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of that. And the scoring problems really generally continue. Although they did score 5 twice this week, they also scored twice this week as they head into Nashville. So, it's
either the light switch was on or it's completely off.
Yeah, one or the other.
But
I mean, again, and I mean Matt Coronado needs a little bit more luck, but I think the forwards have been playing pretty well. But a telltale sign of the Flames scoring troubles is Nazem Kadri when he scored in that Florida game. That was his first goal in 10 games. So and
realistically, there isn't really much difference between how this team has played through 2 months between last year and this year. There was so many games in the month of October where they lost by a single goal or the team scored an empty netter. And a year ago, they were finding a way to get that equalizer and drive the game to overtime. And I think they had something like 11 or 12 games where they lost in the first month and a bit by only a single goal, discounting empty netters. And a year ago they probably would have walked away with 5 or 6 overtime points because of that. And if you look at the standings, you add 5 and they're in a playoff spot. And realistically, this team is more or less playing as well as they were. Just they didn't get the same level of bounces, from grinding the other teams down in October, and that's been the difference thus far.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think they've played. I don't think their play has been horrible. I think they've been the effort is always there. It's just they can't score, or they're just
they just don't have the talent.
They don't.
And they basically have a second line, 2 third lines, and a fourth line. And that's being generous. It's basically a second, a third, and 2 fourth lines. So it's hard when you don't have anybody that's a first line player on this team. Even Nazem Kadri, who's an excellent player, is a second line center.
So as we look at the standings, the Flames will come into the week before the Nashville game in 31st place overall. They are currently, as I look down, scroll down here, 9, 14, and 4. That is good for 22 points. That is second last in the Western Conference, and as mentioned, 31st in the National Hockey League. And they do play this week against the Nashville Predators, and then they come home for one game, I believe, and they're back on the road again. So playing the Kings. But let's get into. Well, I mean, I think everybody talked enough about the Don Maloney. I mean, you guys, I did a podcast about it. You guys did a podcast about it. But it's ended up on Thanksgiving, on American Thanksgiving on Thursday. The Calgary Flames did announce that Don Maloney, Craig Conroy, Brad Pascal, and Dave Nonis all received a 2-year extension, and this extension was actually signed before the season. And so the timing of this announcement is a little bizarre. Of course, as Matt mentioned, there was a plethora of anger towards the interviews, and there were 3 really. You had the one with Brendan Parker in the intermission of the Buffalo game, and you had the part 1 and the part 2 interview with Eric Francis, with talking about what. Some of the great quotes include fantasy drafting Gavin McKenna. We want to be Dallas. We need more Nazem Kadris, which I totally understand. You need more. I understand the gist of that conversation. But you need younger players, younger than yet Nazem Kadri. I get the spirit of what you were saying. I don't think certainly didn't come across. And just like, yeah. It was just a very angry fan base. And then Craig Conroy,
and like realistically, speaking both as the podcaster and a fan, that like if I'm watching a game, I'm not there to watch Nazem Kadri, Rasmus Anderson, or Huberdeau or any of that, because in 3 or 4 years when the team's good, those guys aren't even going to be relevant to the team. And like I pay attention to the young guys coming up, like how a guy like Kuznetsov's doing, how Wolf's doing, Coronado, Zari, Honzik when he was healthy, things like that. And like there are a whole bunch of players on this team that for the long term are virtually irrelevant to the Flames' success. So it doesn't, like, those players, and that's not to say like I'm not a fan of them, but they don't matter for where this team is at. And
yeah. And everybody knows where this team is at. No, I don't think that the fan base there's nobody in the fan base that I'm saying that there's like, wow, there's a miracle run to get into the playoffs. Everybody knows the score at this particular point. And even when you heard Craig Conroy, he basically said it. Everybody knows where we're at. Everybody knows what is going on here. I think the first thing that I think we need to talk about here before we get into the extensions part, honestly, Matt, I have to ask if Craig Conroy and Don, I know that there was a picture on Sportsnet that saw Don Maloney and Craig Conroy were sitting together. But Matt, that was such a dichotomy of opposing views to a vision that I have ever heard. Like Craig Conroy was talking about Ethan Whitenbach and draft picks, and he was able to talk about Zane Parekh, and he was able to talk about some of the draft picks that are coming up. I mean, he touched on Cole Reshny, he touched on Colin Potter, he was like, man, if he touched on Samuel Honze, like he spoke with such a passion about the young kids, and Don Maloney he mentioned Parekh and Gridden. And other than that, I don't know if he knew that. Are they in the same room?
Honestly, I feel that it was a very ham-handed attempt to, say that, oh, well, we really cherish our guys. So if you want to actually get them, step up your offers. But, done in a very, ham-fisted, not very well communicated way. And like I feel that everybody is actually on the same page. It's just that Maloney is not very good at speaking in the media, and this has been a thing off and on basically since we hired him, that you very rarely ever heard from the guy. And like I can understand the point of like, hey, we're not just gonna, yes, we have valuable players, but we're not just gonna give them away. Like, bring an actual offer. But the way he how he approached it and worded it, it made it sound like he was in delusional land
Yeah.
of, like, oh, we're just, a 7-game win streak away from being a playoff team, like, like not basis in any sort of reality at all. And, it's always good whenever you're in a group situation to have differing opinions. So, like, I'm not opposed to having Maloney in there, and being, the, devil's advocate for other ways of thinking, because that does tend to get you the best results, because sometimes you overlook things. But there is a clear path forward for the Flames, and it involves trading some of the veteran guys off for more draft picks and future assets. Sort of like the Lindholm trade, where you have Bruce David, who's coming up. Gradin was the draft pick. Like, the Flames now have two very solid young players that look to be main pieces of the team in 2 or 3 years in the roster, just by removing Lindholm. And if you can do that with Anderson, Kadri, Coleman, and whomever else that you can flip, like, it's not a bad thing for this team to do that. And the bulk of the work that's been done over the last 2 years, like, we've seen, like, all the guys that were traded a couple of years ago, Markstrom getting dealt, Mangiapane getting dealt, like, and the returns for all of those players have been significant, like getting that first round pick, which I do believe turned into Reshny, and Ball, for Markstrom, when you
Yeah.
already had Wolf, ready to step in. Like, that was great asset management. Getting the second round pick for Mangiapane allowed the Flames to trade their own second to get Frost and Farabee, who have rebuilt their value, where if you wanted to trade them tomorrow, you'd probably get a first round pick for each of them. Like, it's one of those where, the acquisition of assets has been good when they've made the trades. It's just, let's do some more, please.
Well, and their drafting actually overall has not been too bad really since the Craig Conroy era. Now, I think they are still a little bit behind the 8 ball. I think you have to express a little bit of concern with both injuries to Honzek and Zary. That is going to curb your development a little bit.
Yeah,
But
and even Henry Muse as well,
yeah,
because he's out for the year.
yep. But you look at a guy like Ethan Whitenbach, who's getting some notoriety for what he's been doing this year. Cullen Potter, a lot of people felt was a U.S. junior snub. He was a late first round pick last year. Cole Reshny's doing pretty well. They've got a lot of, and you talked about Gridin, Berskevich was it a draft pick, a trade acquisition. Yep, Matt Maceo Phillips, who I think is going to play some games in the NHL. I think it's a big, massive defenseman. You really look at the development of a guy like Adam Klapka, not going to be a top 6 forward,
No,
but still pretty effective. I think the drafting has been pretty solid. Have they made mistakes? Of course, they have made mistakes. The Edmonton Oilers passed on Jesper Wallstedt. Everybody makes mistakes, okay? So,
yeah.
like that happens.
Yeah. Well, and the Flames, their drafting recently reminds me of the early 2000s Chicago Blackhawks, where they were able to add guys like Keith, like Seabrook, like Byfuglien, Boland, like, basically building out all the secondary guys in their organization. And then, like, once they finally hit rock bottom, they were able to drop in Taves and Kane, and bam, dynasty caliber team. Like, I'm feeling like the Flames have done a very good job of getting, like, those really good second, third line, fourth line guys, all the defensemen that they need. They have the star caliber goaltender. It's just, you need to airlift, a guy like a Monahan, like a Tkachuk, that you can only get as, drafting in the top 5. you need to get a couple of those guys that you can airlift into your team, and they give them the reins of, hey, you want to be the star, go for it, have fun.
Yeah, and you look at the Western Conference right now, you've got, let's go through the list of stars. You've got Bedard, Celebrini, Carlson, you've got Fernell McDavid, you've got McKinnon, you have got Kaprizov in Minnesota.
Even Cutter Gauthier in Anaheim.
Like, you are not, the point being is you're not going to go through a playoff round without facing a franchise player. And
no, and like anybody that would be on the fence of, oh, should the Flames rebuild or not, you just have to look at Macklin, Celebrini, and Connor Bedard and go, hey, that would be awesome to watch 40 times a year if you're going to the games. Like.
Well, and it's also like at some point, like you've got to start being on the forward attack in terms of like just not like Michael Backlund cannot defend players for the rest of his life. At some point, you're going to have to find some offense, and like these next 2 years are the drafts that you can do it. You've got, if it's not only McKenna, you've got a couple of other centers in this draft that are going to be could potential franchise players in your top 5. Would it be great to get Gavin McKenna? Absolutely. But like, don't forget this top 5 of this draft is one of the strongest.
No, it reminds me a lot of the Monahan draft where you had McKinnon, Seth Jones, Barkov, Lindholm and Monahan, like all in the top 6. And, other than Jonathan Drouin, like they all became very impact players for their teams. And, Lindholm came to Calgary as well and, was our first line center for a couple of years. And, like it feels like one of those type of drafts where as long as you're in the top 5, like you're likely going to get one of those really top end guys. And frankly, like, as good as Zane Parekh and Matvei Gradin are, like the Flames don't have a number 1 defenseman prospect or a number 1 forward prospect. And, those guys might turn into that. But, if the Flames say draft first overall and they don't go for McKenna, but the defenseman,
Verhoff.
Verhoff, couldn't remember his name off the top of my head for some reason, but, if they went that route, it's like, oh no, now we have 2 potential franchise defensemen, and, we're not likely going to get any better next year. So, you're gonna get insert forward here next year and just keep going. And if you do make those trades for Anderson and Kadri and Coleman, like you're likely walking away with 3 or 4 picks in the top 60 from those deals. So like it the Flames already have 2 firsts this year. You're talking about having like 7 or 8 picks in the top 60. All of a sudden, like, oh, the Flames, with that many darts are going to probably land 1 or 2 of them being first line caliber players. So, that's why, like, I'm really not opposed to trading off so many parts because, might as well.
Yeah. Dan would understand this analogy a little bit more since he's a wrestling fan, but this is sort of like Edge and the Money in the Bank contract. This is the opportunity that you take the Money in the Bank contract and you just cash it in for a couple of these high picks, and then you're developing for yourself going into that new arena. And you need a star to sell that new arena, right? And Dustin Wolf is a star, but you need that offensive star. And
yeah, well, and you look at like the teams that have been, like the dynasty-ish teams, like Chicago had Keith and Seabrook, LA they had Drew Doughty, Boston had Zdeno Chara being the monster that he was, and you go through and like all of the teams like usually have a really good number 1 defenseman, to go with their number one forward, whomever that is, and a good supporting cast. And even like the Florida Panthers, like they have Ekblad to go along with the guys like Tkachuk, Barkov, and all the rest.
Yeah. Yeah, you need a team, but you need that star to sell the tickets and get the younger crowd kind of excited about the team. So certainly I think everybody is pretty much on the same page of that. Just looking at this team going forward, I don't think anybody's expecting. I wouldn't say nobody wants the playoffs. Nobody's expecting the playoffs. I think everybody.
No, I think that boat sailed. Like you're a third of the way through the season and you're 31st. And, like while St. Louis was able to pull out the miracle that they did, being dead last at the end of January, they were also like one of the best teams in the league the year prior, and everything went wrong through that time. And Bennington got hot and they went like 32-3 or something to end the season.
Yeah.
Like they just won every game and they made the playoffs by 1 point. Like that's not realistic to happen. Like it's literally the only time in the last 55 years that a team was that far out and actually made it.
I mean, even last year, Matt, St. Louis pretty much pulled off the same thing to get themselves into the playoffs, and then they.
Oh, I know. Actually, the Flames did too. Like we were right neck and neck. Like all three of the Wild, us, and St. Louis, basically was like a guaranteed win night whenever they'd play.
Yeah. By the way, the other two centers, the two big, the names, the other names other than McKenna and Verhoff that are going to be talked about in this draft, Ivar Stenberg from Frölunda in Sweden. The other two, Ethan Belkats for the Windsor Spitfires, Ryan Robrick is a center from Niagara Ice Dogs, and Tynan Lawrence from the Lumberjacks of the USHL are part of the top 5-6 that people are talking about. So that's kind of the eyes of the Flames fans. If you're kind of looking ahead, that's where you're kind of looking at. I guess let's kind of dig into 2 years. I guess, well, they gave Huska 2 years. 2 years is the arena. I'm just a little bit concerned about this extension being so short.
I'm not, just because of the fact that the Flames, frankly, have gone through so many people before that, it's kind of like keep doing a good job and we'll keep you at it. It's sort of like a Ginla when they just re-sign him to like a 1 or 2 year deal, like every like season or two, and it just roll it over. It's like, fine, that's fine. I think that most of all that the ownership is deathly afraid of the Flames being Buffalo, which should scare every team, frankly. And it's wanting to.
I don't want to give credence to the Flames are worse than Buffalo, but they have not had a hell of a lot of success. Like,
No, but it's kind of like Conroy had a plan from the get-go when he was hired, and in my mind, he's done an A+ job. And I think Huska, since he's taken over, has also done an A+ job with what he's had. And it's like, okay, well, have another 2 years, and if you continue to develop your plan and you are actually successful with it, then like after the next contract, if they actually do everything effectively and well, I could see both the coaching staff and the management getting a long-term extension. It's just I think the apprehension is that in case like we're spinning the tires basically and looking at like a 10-year rebuild, that the team might want to go in a different direction if Conroy's plan isn't working quite as well as it seems to be at this point.
Yeah, he has the grace. I think going forward, I guess one of my questions is going to be, At what point are we going to see Craig Conroy in the Don Maloney chair going forward?
No, I think it's his show to run, and much
Conroy
like
should run.
yeah,
Well,
and
okay, so you don't like that's kind of what I mean, though. Is he going to be the man, the president of hockey operations? Is he going to take over for where Maloney is, and then kind of bring in his own people?
I think that I honestly think that he's kind of running the show with Maloney being like the veteran guy that you know because Conroy is a first round or first time general manager, just having somebody who's been around forever, sort of like when Burke was here when Treliving took over, that it makes a lot of sense to just have somebody there as the hey, I know it, I know things, you're having issues, come to me. But no, I feel that it's Conroy's boat and he's driving it. So
I kind of feel that way too. I think that was very clear from the two interviews, right? It really felt like Maloney was not in charge, and it felt like Conroy was in charge. And I mean, Conroy could talk. Conroy could talk to a water bottle for an hour, and the water bottle would be completely engaged. So that's just the way that Conroy talks. It's very clear that Conroy is comfortable in front of a mic, and Maloney isn't. But I also feel like Conroy was. I think one of the Conroy was able to articulate his vision because he knows it. He knows his
yeah,
plan. Like he knows the players that he's drafting, and he like
yeah,
he's already
and
on the study mission now. So
yeah, no, and like we interviewed him once, which was supposed to be like a 5 to 10 minute interview, and it ended up being like 45 minutes. And it's one of those where like he has always shown that he's had a good eye. Like he was one of the guys that was advocating for the Flames to draft Gaudreau when that happened, and you see the emphasis on skill with the guys that they've been drafting. Guys like Reshny and Potter and Wittenbach are, clear examples of that. And, it's one of those that it just, things just take time. And
yeah,
like, you can't just airlift these guys into the NHL. You have to wait 2 or 3 years for or more for those guys to actually make the NHL and be full-time NHLers. And like a guy like Matvei Gradin, at the age of 19 making the NHL was a huge outlier, and like what he's doing in the A is also a huge outlier. And the guys that i- his numbers compared to are basically all-star players in the NHL, like Willie Nylander, and Jason Spezza, like guys that everybody that's watched hockey over the last 20 years knows. So, it takes time though. And
yeah,
it would be one thing if the Flames had been in this phase for a number of years, but basically it took Kachuk and Johnny leaving for the team to start looking at other things. And they didn't have a lot of draft picks in, I think it was 2022, when they took Topi Roni in the second round,
yeah.
and they only had 3 draft picks that year, and the prospect pool was basically non-existent. So to go from that to basically having a good handle on everything right now is a huge step forward. And looking forward to the next 2 years to see how much more he can add to that prospect base.
Yeah. So since Conroy has been the GM, the Flames have picked 6 picks into 2023. They picked 9. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 in 2024 and 8 in 2025. So that's a total of 18 plus
25.
25 picks. since he took over. So, and that's like, I mean, let's not forget Sunayev. I think Sunayev is going to play some games. I was a big fan of Jaden Lipinski. I wonder what's going to happen to him going forward.
Well, and one thing also to note is that of those 25 picks, 15 of them were in the top 3 rounds. And all of the third round picks are looking good thus far. Sunayev, Maceo Phillips, Henry Muse, and Kirill Zarubin, who's a goalie in Russia. His stats are looking excellent over there. So, getting that many high picks has also helped to fill out the organization.
Yeah, this is all great. This really the foundation is there. It's just a matter of finding that franchise guy. And, I think the other thing that Maloney talked about with the Dallas model is the Dallas model is wonderful, but Dallas got to the Western Conference Final twice. You could argue that they had the better team. You're probably right. They had the better team, but they didn't have Connor McDavid.
No.
And that was ultimately one of the difference. Like as bad as Stuart Skinner is, they're not they didn't have to worry because they got McDavid and Draisaitl. They can fix a bunch of problems.
Oh yeah,
they're willing to play 4-3.
Yeah, well, exactly, and when you have those two types of players, it doesn't take much to get to the playoffs and take a run, especially with how good they are in the postseason.
Yeah.
If they had even a semi-good team around them, they probably would have won 3 or 4 cups by now. But depth wasn't a priority, I guess.
No, that's a whole other. How they've handled the rest of that is in the other thing, and that's the other thing that I think a lot of people have. I think this is something that nobody's talking about enough, Matt. If McDavid leaves in 3 years, when his contract is up, the Edmonton Oilers are going to be hot garbage for a very, very, very long time. They are going to go through a drought. They do not have.
They're going to be Buffalo level, 10 plus years in the desert level of bad, because they don't have a prospect base. They don't have anything. It's literally just McDavid and Draisaitl, and if either of them get hurt or leave, there goes the ball game.
Yeah, it's like that. And so this is the opportunity to get that kind of guy, to get you building yourself up to the point that you can pass Edmonton and get yourself into the playoffs and bury the Oilers for a while. This is a great opportunity to do that.
Oh, for sure. And if you look at the Oilers drafts from 2019 forward, the only 2 guys that have shown anything at the NHL level both play for St. Louis, Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg.
Yeah.
And literally zeros across the board, basically, from any of their players that they've drafted. And you can't go 6-7 years getting basically 0 out of a draft and expect to have an actual team.
Well, you obviously probably have your first round draft picks. I mean, they're trade bait now to try to get something to get yourself make sure you're into next year. I mean, that Connor Clattenburg has had a couple of fights. He's going to be a tough guy. I like Sam O'Reilly. I think he'll be a good player, but they drafted 3 players in 2023, and 2 of them were in the bot 6 and 7. Reed Schaefer is a guy I think is going to play in the league. He's only played 2 games but he was traded to Nashville. Xavier Bourgeau was a guy. They've Tyler Tullio was a guy that a lot of people had expectations on. That 2021 draft, there's only 1 player that has played 1 game, and that was Shane Lachance. Xavier Bourgeau has not played a game, and I don't know if he's going to play a game in the National Hockey League. But that was the other from Jesper Wallstedt. And look what he's doing in Minnesota right now.
I know.
So, yeah.
The Oilers, like things are so desperate up there that there's even been some talk of them trying to get Cooley off of us, which, take the guy who's played 16 games in the NHL. That'll solve all your problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating. Again, I guess just before, I did want to spend a couple moments and just talking about it, kind of the NHL in whole here, but anything else about the Flames that we should talk about here, or?
One thing that I would like to talk about, moving forward is that the Flames are likely also going to, much like with the Lindholm trade, take on players like Kuzmenko in that trade. And so, if you're looking at teams to potentially deal with, the odds that the Flames will be getting veteran guys back. One of the players that makes sense if they were to make a deal with, say, New Jersey would be to take Andre Palat's deal, because, he's a veteran and he's just kind of on their third, fourth line for them and has another year after this one. That would be a way to facilitate a Kadri trade or Coleman. So, just because veteran guys would be getting shipped out doesn't mean that it's just going to be all young guys. It's going to be still a blend of everything.
You have to have that. You look at even Anaheim, and as much as everybody's talking about the young guys at Anaheim, and for sure they've been an absolute impact, don't discount the impact that a Radko Gudas, Jacob Trouba, and a Chris Kreider has had. Even in San Jose, what Tyler Toffoli has helped out that team as well, right? You do need those veterans to kind of get you to the next level. And just to teach habits, just to teach how you play the game, all of those things. I do think that is important.
Well, and you see that with basically anybody they throw with Michael Backlund.
Yeah.
Here, learn defense from the guy who knows how to do it. Have fun. Doesn't matter who you are, just have fun.
Yep. Matthew Tkachuk would not have been the player he was if he didn't play with Backlund. I've always maintained that.
Yep. I agree.
Also, before we move out, I do want to. I should put this in the agenda. I forgot about this, but I do think a massive shout out to Derek Wills for this week. He learned last Friday that his dad passed away quite suddenly, and the fact that he was able to get back to Ontario, back to Alberta, go on this road trip, and continue to kind of broadcast the Flames games. I just wanted to give a shout out to him. That's a tough pill to swallow, and he's still grinding through. And just wanted to give some shout out to condolences to him. I know that's a tough thing.
Yeah, and when my father passed away, I was doing the podcast, and then having the work helped to give a distraction to focus on something besides all of that. So I'm also kind of grateful that he has something that he can engage his mind on, instead of focusing solely on the loss. And I wish him and his whole family nothing but my best wishes and condolences for his father's passing. It's never an easy situation, and especially when it comes out of the blue.
Yeah, for sure. So we are at basically the American Thanksgiving mark, and when we hit American Thanksgiving, there was only one Canadian team that actually was going to be in the playoffs, and that was the Ottawa Senators. But I think it's too tight to say that that's going to be a foregone conclusion. Although the only team that's really good in Canada right now is also the Ottawa Senators. Everybody else is struggling in some way, shape, or form. We talked a little bit about the Oilers. The Winnipeg Jets are without Connor Hellebuck, and boy, is that showing up right now. They got the crap kicked out of them by Buffalo tonight. Monday night. Vancouver, I mean, Sean and Tyler would talk more about them, but they are already in the point of trying to sell off assets for next season already. Toronto is in the basement of the Atlantic Division, although that's, to be fair.
Well, and the standings are a little bit more compressed this year. Like the difference between 9th and 29th is 6 points.
Yeah,
so like everybody is literally a 3-game winning streak away from being in the top 10. Like it's a little hard at this point to say who is exactly going to be where. Like there are certain teams that are, I feel, overperforming, like Boston, like Seattle, that I feel will drop down a bit. And some teams like Florida, like Toronto, like Winnipeg, that should be better than what they are and will likely bounce back over the next 20 games or so.
Yeah. Okay. So the team that the team you think Boston's going to fall. I kind of think so too. I don't see. I didn't have them in the playoffs. I think Pittsburgh. I think Sidney Crosby is willing them in the playoffs. I think that this is basically Maloney versus Conroy on the ice. Crosby's like, we're not doing no damn rebuild. Okay, just stop that nonsense. We're winning hockey games. My name is Sidney Crosby, and
I can do whatever I damn well please. So
yeah,
I say playoffs. We're in the playoffs. Too bad.
Yeah. The Flyers are boring their way into the playoffs here. The one team I am like, to me, I didn't have the Leafs in the playoffs. I just don't think they so much remind me of the 2022-23 Flames.
Yeah, I agree.
They are, I don't think that they're if their goaltending isn't healthy and Chris Tanev isn't back, that just isn't the same team. And
well, and the thing is that you need defensemen that can actually skate and pass the puck.
Yeah.
And none of the guys on Toronto, save Riley, can do that effectively. And that's the difference. And, you have to be measured with who you go and acquire. And we saw that in Calgary. Guys like Travis Hamonic, getting him, and, him not being an effective player for the team at all.
Yeah.
And, wasting assets that, they could have used, frankly, as they were trying to rebuild at the time, but, tried to take a shortcut. And, I'm not shocked that Toronto is faltering with Tree in charge, because, just some of the not recognizing how the NHL actually works, in terms of, like before, say like 2010, that would have been an effective way to do it, but it's gotten so much more where the defensemen kind of have to be quasi forwards as well, that guys like Anderson, for example, who can play at both ends of the ice, you need those guys, and Toronto just doesn't have a single one other than Riley.
Yeah. And then he pulled his own Travis Hamonic trade in Toronto, trading Fraser Minten and a first-round pick for Brandon Carlo.
Oh, I know.
That was his Travis Hamonic dedication there. So, I haven't been I've not been a believer in Toronto. I think I've had Ottawa in the playoffs. I think they get in, and I think Montreal is going to hang in there as well.
Same here.
Yeah. In the West, my worst pick was Colorado was going to be fighting for a wild card. I looked absolutely like an idiot because they've only lost one regulation game, and I think that's quite possibly because I thought Winnipeg would be better, because I thought I did, and I was like, but Colorado, and I thought St. Louis would be better, but Minnesota's kind of going to where they finally, I think,
should be. Yeah.
I think the top three are Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota. I think Winnipeg gets into the wild card.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by the Ducks finally returning to relevance.
I don't know if their play is going to be sustainable though.
No, I think that they'll probably
coverage is insane. Like,
I think they'll make the playoffs. I don't think they'll be, well, they're currently leading the division. I don't think that will last, but I still think that they'll probably be the 2 or 3 seed in the Pacific, and that they have too many good young players, and they're finally getting some goaltending to go along with it. So
yeah, although Donskoy is out for a couple of weeks, so that will be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think Chicago will fade out.
Yeah. Same with San Jose. Like, they're both doing really good, but I think that they won't have the legs. Same with Seattle and Utah.
Yeah, I just like Seattle is getting some goaltending, but it's never been something that I've been able to trust with Seattle. Does Edmonton get back into this?
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah. I honestly feel that St. Louis probably goes on a run too, and they make it. Yeah, I honestly I think that Winnipeg probably misses the playoffs this year. With Hellebuck being out,
I think they'll get in. I think they'll get Hellebuck back, and they'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be 5 Central, 3 Pacific get in.
Yeah, I agree.
I thought, but
yeah, I think that the 3 Pacific that are at the top, Anaheim, LA, and Vegas, are the 3 teams that will make it from our division, and then all Central teams for the rest.
Yeah. What about Florida?
I think they bounce back. Tkachuk's due back soon-ish, and they're too good of a team to miss the playoffs. Losing Barkov really has hurt them a lot, but well, any team that loses their 2 best forwards for months is gonna suck. Like, it does. You literally take McKinnon and Nate just out of Colorado, and they're probably down where Utah and Chicago are.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what Florida does with this Barkov situation. It's kind of tough right now because there's nobody really out of a playoff spot yet that they can go find a center for. To replace, my bold prediction was it would be Crosby that walks in and saves the day in Florida, but that doesn't look like that's going to happen because Pittsburgh is going to be in the fight. So,
yeah.
Maybe it's Austin Matthews.
Yeah. Or John Tavares.
Yeah.
Or Nazem Kadri.
That's another name that's been kind of popping out there too. It'll be interesting. There's a few names out there, but I mean, it's the only one that would be close to replacing Barkov out of all of that would be Crosby, but that's not going to happen. Like, that was my bold prediction, but because I thought Pittsburgh would absolutely suck this year.
Yeah, everybody. Well, same here. Yeah, like, I thought they were going to be where we are, basically, in that same conversation, and that's not the case.
Yeah. All right, I think we've covered anything. Anything else we need to speak about here, or
nope?
All right, tell us what you guys got going on at Fireside Chat.
We'll be recording our next show on Sunday, and it'll be up on Monday next week. And just looking forward to seeing how the month of December breaks down for the Flames. They play 13 games, and if they're wanting to try and fight for a playoff spot and be relevant, they need to go at least 9-4, and if not 10-3. Which, considering they're playing 7 really good teams, odds of that being slim to none. And then, just looking ahead to seeing, if and when trades start, rumors start getting a little more heated and all that fun.
Yeah. I think we'll hear more about that this month as we continue. So, Sean and Tyler and possibly Chris will be joining on Thursday to talk about the Canucks situation and what's going on there. And we'll be You'll notice with us, we'll have the Hockey Podcast logo on our site, and then check the Hockey Podcast Network as well. And of course, you can follow Fireside Chat, Matt and Fireside Chat at Fireside Chat Podcast on Twitter and wherever fine podcasts are sold, as Dan said. You can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks, Twitch, and subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Hockey Podcast Network. Thanks everyone for watching and listening, and we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.